What if Regirock was in Gen 1 OU? Now, I believe the only other Reggie I've gone over was Regirock, and that was a long time ago, immediately after Regirock got banned in Gen 9. It's getting close to a year since I did that. Yeah, it's been a while. And it's a shame. Actually, no, that's not true. I also did Regice. Regice, I don't remember when, but it was also getting close to a year, I believe. Either way, though, that's still way too long. And it's a shame because the Reggies are all very interesting, and all of them would be, I would imagine, pretty great. Except for maybe Regidrago. But with Regidrago, I probably would give it its signature. And with this signature, it'd probably be okay. Now, I'll just give you a spoiler right now. Even if I do Registeel in the near future, even with Regirock having a 31% crit rate, and Registeel over here having Explosion, having great rock typing, just giving you a spoiler, nothing will ever be as good as Regice with 200 special and freaking Amnesia of all things. But that doesn't mean that Regirock wouldn't be good. On the contrary, this guy is giving Rhydon a lot of run for his money, because he has a lot of the same tools that makes Rhydon great. In some ways, expands upon them, and does some things that Rhydon can't. However, there are some things Rhydon can do that Regirock can't. Now let's start with the elephant in the room. That is 200 base defense. I do not care what normal move it is. It can be from Taurus's Body Slam, Snorlax's Self-Destruct, or heaven forbid, Chansey using Pound. It's not doing anything. But even a theoretical Slaking using a critical slash is still not gonna do anything. That's already amazing. Regirock is by far the best physical tank in the game. Not even like he even cares that much about non-stab or non-critical earthquakes. Which I know sounds like a lot already. Meaning, like saying it doesn't need to be a crit and it doesn't need to be stab in order for him not to care about it. But even with like those former two, it's not like he just immediately dies to them. Not to mention with 100 special defense, he can do a decent job tanking special moves as well. But it's really with the moveset that helps him shine. Because even though 100 base attack is already pretty good, it's more so, I would say, utility for him. Thunder Wave is just amazing. You know how much Rhydon wishes he had Thunder Wave? Being able to tank pretty much everything, paralyze, potentially being faster than stuff, is pretty great. Rock Slide and Earthquake is already perfect coverage. And just an FYI, when it comes to damage calcs, both roughly do the same amount as each other. So I'm almost always going to recommend use Earthquake unless it's super effective coverage with Rock Slide. Just because Rock Slide's a little bit less accurate. And of course, by far the most valuable thing Regirock has is Explosion. Explosion will nuke pretty much everything. Even Rhydon, I don't think particularly wants to be hit by Regirock's Explosion. It's just a really useful move for you. It allows you to take out a lot of things you normally wouldn't. With Paralysis, it's very easy for you to get into a damage range of an Explosion, and if full HP is enough to KO it, with the perfect coverage of Earthquake and Rock Slide, you can probably do enough damage to at least two-shot basically everything in the game. And also, with that base 50 speed, that's actually pretty relevant too, because Regirock is actually faster than Rhydon, Swelbro, and Snorlax. So even without Paralysis, being faster than those three is already huge. Rhydon's pretty obvious, because Rhydon's weak to Earthquake. Snorlax probably isn't that obvious, Snorlax is not surprising either, because with Snorlax, it doesn't have Earthquake, it's not really hurting you. And Amnesia, you don't really want to set up against a Regirock, because again, even if Reflect Up, Regirock can always go boom. And that's basically the same thing for Slowbro. Slowbro is annoyed by getting paralyzed, because Slowbro prefers to just already be the fastest thing and just paralyze and outspeed everything so it can go for amnesia. But speaking of which, it takes 2 Surfs to KO Regirock, which means Slowbro needs to choose between going for immediate damage or going for at least 1 amnesia to get the KO. Either way though, it doesn't matter, because since Regirock will always outspeed, that means it can always go for Explosion. And even if Explosion doesn't kill Slowbro, the important thing it's doing is just giving you momentum. In the older generations, when a Pokemon explodes, or if a Pokemon dies, whether it be from poison or something else, like entry hazards, it ends the turn immediately. Your opponent doesn't get to go. So if you use Explosion, do most of Slowbro's health, whether or not it has Amnesia up, you have it in the perfect position to revenge kill. With, like, let's say a Chansey or Alakazam Seismic Toss, a critical Thunderbolt, or just Tauros doing Tauros things. You get the idea. Now, unfortunately, unlike Rhydon, you definitely do wish you had Sap Earthquake, but way more importantly, you wish you had a Thunder Wave immunity and just an Electric immunity in general. Because even though you do a decent job against both Zapdos and Jolteon, because you have super effective coverage against them, the fact they can actually hit you with Thunderbolts is concerning. Especially since both have high special and both have really great crit rates. But outside of that, Regirock is just great. And I think he'd be even better in Gen 2. Like, holy crap. A generation where Zapdos and Snorlax reign supreme, and Regirock can use curse sets with Rest Talk or Leftovers, that is just terrifying. It's a shame he only got introduced in Gen 3. But luckily, here in Gen 1, it looks like he's just really, really good. I think ultimately, he's not better than Rhydon, but I don't think it matters too much. Whatever tier you put Rhydon in, you have to put Regirock in the exact same tier. He demands your respect, because if you don't respect him, he can either wall out whatever you have, or he can just go boom. The last thing I'll say before going to replays is that Regirock really wishes it had rest. And technically, if you really wanted to, you can remove one of these for rest. But the issue with that is, you're going to get rid of something very valuable. Thunder Wave and Explosion are pretty self-explanatory. And whether you get rid of Earthquake or Rock Slide, means you lose serious coverage to something else. If you get rid of Earthquake, you suddenly lose to Rhydon and Gengar. If you get rid of Rock Slide, you lose to Jinx and Zapdos. And some things like Starmie and Executor beat you no matter what. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's get to the replays, shall we? Starting off with the boy himself, Tauros. And getting crits is definitely scary. I had to make 2 replays in a row where Tauros crit twice in a row, which I don't think is very accurate, which is why I didn't use them to represent. But luckily, or actually unluckily, Tauros can somehow survive an explosion along with Earthquake Chip. Granted, it was a damage range, but I still think it was pretty surprising. But to be fair, Regirock definitely did get unlucky with that crit at the beginning of the game. So I don't think it matters too much. Because ultimately, even if Regirock doesn't kill Tauros, unlike Rhydon, it's not weak to Blizzard, which is huge. But also, Tauros naturally fears paralysis. So even if Regirock got nothing else, paralyzes, and then goes boom, that's doing its job. It essentially already took out the Tauros. So I'm gonna say this is a good matchup. But I think that the tiers I put I could go either way. But I might change it, who knows. Now, Snorlax is like Tauros, but does have a good crit rate. So, obviously does significantly better. And I think I already talked about my thoughts on this during the pre-analysis. Regirock outspeeds and has Explosion. And if it doesn't have Earthquake exactly, most Snorlax sets can't really hurt it. And while technically Amnesia Wax could, Amnesia Wax can never set up because Regirock goes for Explosion, which kills. And I don't think Reflect Wax does too much better, because Explosion's still really good for momentum and pivoting. Or not really pivoting, but kinda, in a way. Now, Chansey, Earthquake doesn't really do that much, unfortunately. Which really just goes to show just how bulky things really are in Gen 1. Where even a base 100 attack doesn't do that much. But Explosion, yeah, it does good damage, I would say. And Reflect Chansey is obviously going to take it a lot better. But even here, getting paralyzed is still really annoying. And if you go for Explosion, it does about, I think, half? Remember correctly? Yeah, it does half. And that's already a Chansey that might be Revenge Code later. If you're switching to something like a Tauros. Not really worth risking if you're the Chansey player, I would say. So even in the worst case scenario, it's pretty good at just weakening all of the normals, really. And Zam has high special attack, and with crits and special drops, obviously, Regirock really doesn't want to tank it. Not at all. But at the same time, Explosion is always just a guaranteed KO. So if you want to play really aggressively, you can just go boom and kill Zam right away. Which is nice. Cloyster, yeah, it's not nice. Not at all. What do you even want me to say here? I guess technically it's not unwinnable. And that's because if Regirock goes for Thunder Wave, assuming Clamp misses, that's annoying. You have super effective coverage, and you can always go boom. But Cloyster has high defense. And do you know how unbelievably lucky you need to be for that to happen? I wouldn't count on it. But by technicality, it's not an unwinnable matchup, but does that matter? Now here's one that is an unwinnable matchup. Technically going boom can maybe kill the Executor, but the way I do these videos, if something gets forced to use Explosion, then that is definitely not a good matchup for it. I will put things that could go either way if the most optimal play is always needing to use Explosion. That's not the point of Explosion, because Explosion is trying to get a fair trade. But if you're forcing the opponent to go for Explosion, you're putting them in a position where they're forced to go boom, but it's almost never going to be a fair trade. Because either you're already in a really good position, or you can very easily predict when they're going to go for Explosion and go into Rhydon or Gengar or you know, Regirock. That's kind of ironic. But that definitely will happen if Regirock was in Gen 1. Speaking of Gengar, Paralysis, Gengar hates. I'd even say it hits Earthquake even more. So, if it puts Regirock to sleep, it's golden, but I don't think it's worth it. Because if Gengar gets paralyzed, then it's just dead. Or double dead? Because it's a ghost type? I don't know. It's weird. Just like most things in these what if videos. Now, here's a good example of just why not being immune to electric is so detrimental. Granted, Regirock does get unlucky here with both a crit and a full paralysis, but still, the fact that it takes damage from electric type moves at all means that it doesn't do as good a job as Rhydon in terms of long loss that it's supposed to. It's great that it's really good against physical attackers, but you are definitely having to make a trade-off. Although I will say, there might be a decent argument for using both on your team, but who knows. Now, Luck because Jinx, you already know how that kind of goes, but without it, to my surprise, Rock Slide isn't a guaranteed KO. Neither is Psychic after one special drop. Or actually, it's mostly, but I thought it would always just be guaranteed, you know? I didn't think there'd be a chance that Jinx can barely survive. But this probably doesn't matter too much, because assuming something's already put to sleep, yeah, the Jinx is obviously switching out. Now, for Rhydon, here's where your speed stat becomes very relevant. Since you outspeed, both of you will always 3-hit KO the other, which means Regirock just barely beats Rhydon in a 1v1. Although it's definitely worth saying that with paralysis existing, and with Regirock being susceptible to Thunder Wave, Rhydon can very easily win. But then again, even if it's in a winning position, you can always go for Explosion. Now with how high Swellbro's defense is, unfortunately, Explosion doesn't delete it. But I already went into this matchup pretty exclusively, I would say, with the pre-analysis. So you already know my thoughts on this. Even if you're just going boom and just getting momentum, that's already more than enough to deal with the Swellbro. But I still think I'd put Swellbro and could go either way. Now, unfortunately for Starmie, it has Paralysis too, and Recover. So even though most Starmie sets don't use Surf, I'm gonna say it doesn't matter. Even with just Thunderbolt, Blizzard, and Psychic, Starmie has everything it needs to most likely force Regirock to go for Explosion, which is a little less than optimal, especially since Starmie can survive and go for Recover. Now last but not least, we have Zapdos. Zapdos hits really hard, but Rock Slide hits a little bit harder. But also, Zapdos has a really good crit rate. But I don't want to put this in could go either way, because I feel like Zapdos has a lot more to lose. At least in my opinion. But I think my tier list is really outdated. Here it is right here. I think this can probably be moved to good. Same with... maybe... yeah, I think Gengar also could be moved to good now that I think about it. Maybe even great. Because the only thing Gengar has going for it is Hypnosis. And if that misses, Thunder Wave alone is enough to just absolutely kill it. And yeah, I do think this... or actually no, I take back what I said. I think Cloyster should be unwinnable. Because you're... technically, a critical explosion can OHKO Executor too, but I don't think we should count those for reasons why they should be a 1-point tier list or not. But overall, I think I'm mostly satisfied now with the tier list. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but lately with these tier lists, I've been editing them more during the video. Lately for videos, I've just been more indecisive. But I think that's a good thing? Question mark? Because I feel like me not being decisive means that there's probably more for you guys to talk about. Speaking of which, what do you think? Do you think Regirock would be OU? Do you think it'd be better than Rhydon? Or what are some other problems you think Rhydon might, or Regirock might suffer from? And do you think Starmie starts using Surf more often? Where would you actually rank the Swellbro matchup? Let me know in the comments below. But until next time, this is Groundback, and I look forward to hearing from you.